Welcome to the Thought Cafe, which is being conducted by Atal Incubation Center, Central Coffee Research Institute, Center for Entrepreneurship Development. Atal Incubation Center of CCRI is actually a center which has been supported completely by Atal Innovation Mission, and it is being housed and hosted by Coffee Board of India under its sister institution, that is the Central Coffee Research Institute. We are primarily focused on the agri sector and specifically focused on the coffee sector and the coffee related ecosystem, means everything which is there in the coffee ecosystem. It might be the shade crops, the parallel crops like pepper, the shade crops like jackfruit or avocado and other things. If there is any economic activity or innovation which can be brought into these things, then Atal Innovation Center is the center which will help you out with this. We have a pool of mentors who help in developing the very important aspects of entrepreneurship. We do welcome people to apply for the incubation. The second batch of incubation is already out. In the sense, the application, we have already started accepting it. So people who have innovative ideas, who believe which these can be commercialized, who believe that these things can be practical, can apply for the incubation. We conduct pre-incubation programs for people who require the basic knowledge of the coffee sector, the entire value chain, starting from seed till the export market and the retail market and the outreach, the final end of the value chain, along with the business aspects as such. We are in the process of developing a very beautiful infrastructure. Probably this will be the best in the country, because no other incubator is located is in such a center. We are almost next to Vidhan Sauda in Bangalore. We'll be having 10,000 square feet of infrastructure, where we'll have places where workstation will be placed, and we will have places for the product development laboratory, which will have all the infrastructure which is required for the incubator to develop his idea into a commercializable program. And this will be supported by our pool of mentors who come from different streams. These are stalwarts in their respective fields. These are people from coffee sector, they're people from the business areas. So this is the core of our message. We expect our incubators to develop into full-fledged entrepreneurs and graduate out of our incubation after 1.5 years, with the maximum of 1.5 years, and with the focus to also help them to get investments. We also plan to create investors meet as such. After 1 year, there is a probability that we will be giving out seed funds, but that is there are a lot of ifs and buts with it. But we will be arranging for the investors meet as such. But in the course of time, to generally develop the ecosystem, to encourage entrepreneurs to think in a different direction, to see the new things which are coming into the industry, we have arranged for this series of talks called as the Thought Cafe. The plan is to have one lecture by an industry expert every week. As a part of the pre-incubation, we have given access to the participants for about 40 hours of insights into the coffee sector and business and legal compliances. But what was slightly missing was the food safety aspect of it. So as the first lecture in the program, we have called upon today Mr. Ramesh Agrawal, who is the CEO of Food Safety Works. He's by education is a computer science engineer. He did his MBA from IIMB. He has worked in big multinationals. He has great organizational abilities, but his wife and himself, who happens to be the food science expert, they have developed this company called as Food Safety Works. And they have been working with companies to develop the food safety food safety related processes, procedures, and organizational structures as such. Now, the question comes, why did we prioritize food safety as such? I think the prioritization has actually started with the entire ecosystem, which is now suffering with this pandemic. It has made everybody conscious of what they eat, what they do, and one person sitting somewhere in China without the consciousness of food safety had ate something, and the entire world is suffering now. This has made the world conscious of these aspects. And as such, 70% of India's coffee is exported. So the markets which we approach into, basically the European market, has now become ultra conscious about the kind of food, the kind of materials which we eat. India is not far behind. It is also becoming very conscious. The thing about food safety is it's easy to ignore as things are going well. But if things go wrong, it will topple the entire industry as such. So such is the priority. 2015, a mega conglomerate, a multinational like Nestle, had to pull back its entire produce of noodles because the food safety was placed in question. Something in their labeling went wrong, their claims went wrong, and an entire batch of goats was taken back. Now the amount of brand value they had built in, the goodwill they had built in as Nestle, the 2 minutes noodles, which was the friendly accompaniment to everybody, took a beating. Now that's the kind of beating which takes a lot of money to actually resolve assets and to bring in that new image. But let us to encourage entrepreneurs to be food conscious and make this food safety as one of the value differentiators of their product. To make it as a personality of the brand, we have prioritized this conversation along with Mr. Ramesh Agrawal. Sir, are you there? Kindly unmute yourself, sir. Ramesh, sir?
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yeah. So
Okay.
welcome to the program. Thank you for agreeing to come to this program and to speak to the entrepreneurs and the people who are stakeholders in the coffee and food related sectors who have joined in, and to enlighten them about food safety, the basics of it, the compliance which is required in India, what is the industry moving towards, and the very aspect that when you prioritize food safety, how it is going to create a value for you. So kindly go. Sir, there's a lot of background voice. Is it from your side?
It's possible. I am in a room, but I have neighbors, so it might be they who are talking. So maybe if I get louder, they will fade out.
Okay. Sir, please take the stage away. Thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you, Vaibhav. I'm surprised that so many people actually tuned in to learn about food safety right before the new year. So this is a good thing. Some warnings for everybody that it is going to be very, very text-based. It is a very, very regulatory topic. So it will. I don't know how I can make it interesting, but there's a lot of text. So unfortunately, being in the regulatory space, we have to deal with that. It's a vast topic, and I have probably planned for about 40-45 minutes, and we will see what we can cover. If you think you already know this, then feel free to drop me a note, and we'll try to skip. But I have tried to keep this at a very basic level. So we will start with the definition of what is food safety. So food safety is something that a lot of people don't understand. We understand a lot of nutrition. We understand a lot of other things. We understand pesticides, but food safety is something that a lot of people seem to be confused, and what the hell is food safety? So this is the Wikipedia definition and the generally accepted definition of food safety. So food safety is a scientific discipline describing ways to handle, prepare and store foods in a way that prevent foodborne illnesses. So I think a couple of things that you have to stress on is that it is a scientific discipline. It is not hearsay. This has to be proved and validated. And the other thing to focus on is that prevent foodborne illnesses. So it is not to cure you, but to prevent the illnesses, which means it's a proactive system. So you have to do it. You cannot wait for things to happen and do correction. You have to do it beforehand. So that is the message I think I'd like everyone to kind of take from this definition. Um, then the question arises, why food safety? A lot of people say, yeah, nobody really cares. Does it even matter? And while on day-to-day basis, we may not see all of this, but there is an issue. So we say food is the high-risk product next only to pharmaceuticals. So if you've kind of, if you see in our consumption patterns for everything that we consume, there are only two things that go inside your body. The first one is your medicine, which is the highest risk. The next one is your food. So it is a high risk product and you should be aware of it. So even if it is coffee, it can be kind of tricky and dangerous if not done right. Of course, lapses can lead to deadly consequences and even death. If you are from Karnataka locally, you will see a lot of cases that happen where due to lapses in food safety, we've seen all kind of issues, hospitalizations, deaths, all kind of things, right? The other thing that is getting more and more prevalent is around allergens and reactions to food. So not everybody can sort of take every food, and a small bit of contamination in food can have again very very deadly consequences. So if you mix up your nuts with people, so or people who are allergic to nuts get a strain of that into their food, it can be very very dangerous and even fatal for them. So that's the other reason why you should really care about food safety. Of course, there is also the problem with food, which means like other products where you can test it post facto. Uh, a lot of time testing and quality control, as we call it, is may not really be an option. You have to prepare the food, you have to serve it, somebody will consume it. So you cannot kind of test it every time. So you have to make sure that you are proactive and things are in place. Of course, Vaibhav talked about the brand reputation, loss of business. I don't want to kind of repeat that. And then, of course, it is about public health. So whenever it becomes a public health issue, then the consequences are sort of higher. If you see some of the kind of infamous cases for folks who know the Chipotle restaurants, it has shares fell on issues of food safety, so it will have financial impacts. When you are starting up, you may not feel it so much, but I think as you grow your brand, which all entrepreneurs want to do, finally they all want to build their brands, it can be fatal. Uh, of course, things that are not directly inside the food but around the food can also cause some damages to your brand. So somebody filmed an employee with a mopping the tabletops with the floor cleaners, and that became a huge issue. Uh, Locally here, FDA ordered fines for breaking rules, so it's getting there here. Closer to coffee, so contamination in coffee meant the regulations were tightened up for all the exports. And of course, we talked about the public health impact, so which is about, in India, we lose about $15 billion a year just out of food and unsafe products that we eat. So these are all completely avoidable costs for the economy. So just trying to cover all the aspects why food safety becomes so important. I hope everybody is with me so far. Now on to the food safety in India. So India used to be a very different regulation with prevention of food adulteration, oil, dairy, all of that. There were separate acts, and they were there. A lot of them relied on detecting adulteration and then punishing the guy, but by then the damages had already been done. So to fix and align with the world, the FSSAI Act came into place. So it was sent for presidential assent in 2006 to consolidate, of course, all the various laws that we had. They were manufacturing, so it now started regulating everything from manufacturing, storage, distribution, sale, and import, and availability of wholesome and safe food. So it brought everything together under one regulations. Of course, the rules were published in 2011, May, and then they came into effect on 5th of August 2011. So that was our first brush with food safety, where the regulations became effective. So what the rules and regulations did was that they kind of elaborated on what was expected out of business. So on that, we started with 6 regulations that came in 2011. So there was a licensing and registration for food businesses. So if you are doing a food business, I'm sure you are aware that you have to take an FSSAI license. There was regulations for product standards and additives. There was packaging and labeling regulation. There was prohibition and restriction of sales, contaminants, toxin residues, lab and sample analysis. So these were the original 6 regulations that came in 2011. However, there's been quite a few additions subsequently. So in 2016, there was health supplements. 17 was food import. 17 again was approval of non-specified food, organic food, food recall procedure, packaging, alcoholic beverages, fortification of food, advertising and claims, auditing, recognition of labs, recovery and distribution. Of course, the more recent last 3 are from this year itself. So there is a safe foods and balanced diet for children in schools. So now FSSAI standard covers what is served inside of schools and what the schools need to do to make sure that the wholesome and balanced diet is served. The next one that came in this year is on food infant nutrition. So now infant nutrition is also covered by FSSAI. So everything that you need to do. And the latest one, which is a fairly elaborate change on the labeling and display. So there was packaging and labeling regulation, out of which it got split up as labeling and display regulation. So this has brought in pretty tremendous changes in the overall labeling guidelines. So this is just to give you like some names and numbers you can search for on this. But yeah, these are all regulations that any food organizations need to comply on. Now, some of them could be relevant to you, some of may not be. So depending on what products you are, you might have to comply with more than one of these. So the first thing, we started with a licensing requirement. So of course, there are different types of licenses that FSSAI has. So the first one is just a registration. There was recently a lot of hue and cry over, oh, everybody who has a home business needs to get a license. It is not a license, essentially. This is what they need to do. They need to get a registration done. The requirements of this are very simple. The barrier criteria is that if you are doing business of less than 12 lakhs per annum, you could just register yourself. The cost is minimal. It charges you about 100 rupees per year. So that will be the cost of registration. And it can be done at a lot of citizen service centers, online, on the portal, etc., etc. So it's a very simple process. It's not as bad as people make it out to be. The second one is for a state license. So if you're operating in a single state, usually within the state boundary, then you need to get a state license. If your turnover is more than 12 lakhs, your charges would be 2,000 per year. And then there is a central license. So I'm giving you a broad level of classifications. There may be further classifications, sub-classifications, etc., but I'm not going into the details. But I just want to kind of leave you with the thought that there are these three types of licenses that are possible or are what you need to know about. Of course, central license are if you're 100% EOU. If you're into import and export, you have to take a central license. If you're operating in more than 2 states, you'll have to take a central license. All FBOs using process ingredients where they are not established to be safe. Now, of course, there's a further deeper discussion on what these are, but roughly you could take that. If you are in a government agency contracting, then you need a central license. If you're a repacker, relabeler, if you are an e-commerce player. So some of these are available on our Google Assistant. So we have a Google Assistant who will help you navigate. So if you go to our website and click on regulatory and compliance, and then there's a link to a Google Assistant who can help you navigate through what kind of licensing you will require. So you can just, on your Google, you can just say, okay, Google, talk to food safety work. And it will take you to the Google Assistant. So all of this information is sort of navigation is available there. Of course, the basic requirements is that all operators have to follow the basic hygiene and safety guidelines as per Schedule 4, and also ensure one trained supervisor is available for every 25 food handlers. So this is something that is mandatory and which you need to kind of be aware of. So all of the food safety requirements sort of come under Schedule 4 of the Act. So there is a big blue book in which you will get the Schedule 4. Also, you are required to file a return. So you have to file a return by 31st May each year in respect of each class of food product that you have handled. You have to file separate returns for every license. Delay in filing will cause you ₹100 per day penalty. Of course, you also have to renew a license as well in time. License can be applied. So if you have a license is expiring, then you'll have to apply 30 days before expiry. So if your license is expiring on, let's say, 1st of Jan, then December is the grace period, and you have to apply by end of November for renewal of your license. Of course, you can take a license for 1 to 5 years. So the only difference is that the licensing fees is a multiple between 1 to 5 years. Otherwise, the documentation requirement, everything stays the same. So it's just about how you want to kind of, how gung-ho you are on your licensing part. So that's on the requirements for your return. Now coming to the category. So FSSAI defines your licensing has to fall within a category. So you be coffee, so I picked up the coffee specific one. So that comes under 14.1.5. So 14 is a beverage category, which is excluding dairy products. So these are various categories of products. Of course, within that, there are different products that are defined by FSSAI. So you could either be coffee, which is green, raw, or unroasted, or you could be decaffeinated, roasted, and ground coffee. You could be soluble coffee powder. You could be decaffeinated, soluble coffee powder, coffee chicory mixture, instant coffee chicory mixture. So these are the various products that are defined under the category. And the relevance of this is that because they are under separate products, there will be a product definition. So we'll quickly go over the product definitions for some of these, like a soluble coffee powder. So what is a soluble coffee powder? So it says a soluble coffee powder is coffee powder obtained from the freshly roasted and ground pure coffee beans, forms either free-flowing powder or granules, free from impurities, shall not contain chicory or any other added substances. So this is the difference. This is the definition of soluble coffee powder. Similarly, for the green coffee, raw or unroasted, it says dried seeds of Arabica, Iberica, Excelsior. I'm finding it hard to pronounce, but I guess you guys know it better. With their husks removed. If it is roasted coffee, then it should be properly cleaned. Green coffee, which has been roasted to a brown color and has developed its characteristics aroma. If it's a ground coffee, then it says powdered coffee, powdered products obtained from roasted coffee only and shall be free from husk. Of course, for green and unroasted, you should have free from artificial coloring, flavoring, extraneous material, glazing substances. Shall be in sound and dry and fresh condition, free from rancid flavor. So this is how sort of FSSAI defines the various coffees that you talked about. There is also a definition for instant coffee mixture, so which is manufactured from roasted and ground coffee and roasted and ground chicory. Shall be in sound, dry, dust free. So I think these are common, free flowing or granule impurities. Shall not contain any other added substances. So the only thing you can mix is chicory. Similarly, coffee chicory mixture, chicory roasted coffee, chicory powder obtained by roasting and grinding of cleaned and dried roots, and so on and so forth. Of course, the key is not exceeding 2% by weight, right? With or without the addition of edible fats and oil and sugar, not exceeding 2% by weight. Of course, it shall be free from dirt, prepared by mixing roasted and ground coffee. The coffee content in the mixture shall not be less than 51% by mass. So this is what FSSAI defines it. So you have to have at least 51% of coffee to call it coffee. Otherwise, it won't be allowed. So you cannot go to that extent. So these are some of those. And then if you are under the coffee category, there are certain things that you need to declare on your label. So like in a coffee chicory mix, you have to declare how much coffee percent you have and how much chicory do you have. Same with the instant coffee chicory mixture also. So you have to clearly label your product with the percentage. And the exemption you get for being in coffee is that you don't have to put the nutritional information. So if you go by the packaging regulation, you will see that there is a requirement to put the nutritional information on all package. For coffee, that is not required. So you're exempted from putting nutritional information. So broadly, that is what it comes down to. Now, in terms of what you can put and mix in the other products, you can get the detailed product specifications in section 210.2 to 210.4 standards and additive regulations. So what can be added, what should be the limit on some of these products and pesticides and mixtures and all of that is listed in the section 2.10.2 to 2.10.4 of the additive regulation, which was published in 2011. So that's on the coffee part. Now, what happens if you don't follow the regulation? And we are talking this about Indian regulation. So penalty for substandard food may extend up to 15 lakhs. Misbranded foods may extend up to 3 lakhs. Misleading advertisement may extend up to 10 lakhs. Failure to comply, maintaining unhygienic setups may extend up to 1 lakh. Penalty for manufacturing or selling unsafe food can, of course, get you into prison as well, up to 6 years, and a fine and a life imprisonment for severe cases. And carrying out business without a license can attract imprisonment up to 6 months and fine up to 5 lakhs. So this is the one line that was getting highlighted all over the internet, saying everybody needs to have a license, and if you don't have a license, you could go to jail for 6 months or pay 5 lakh rupees fine. So clearly, the home businesses don't qualify for this. This is applicable if your turnovers are greater than 12 lakhs. And also, it does not say that they will put you in jail for 6 months and charge you 5 lakhs, but it could happen. So if it is based on your size and how much kind of a problem that the government sees has happened, it can go up to. So this is the maximum cap on your fine. So that is broadly around the regulation. And if you see, it is not just the manufacturer. Now everybody who is involved in the supply chain can be, it comes under the law. So whether it is the manufacturer, a sales guy, the guy who's selling it, storage or distribution, anybody who's involved in any of the supply chain comes under it, which is a critical aspect, because a lot of times you would see the manufacturer may put in his best case effort to make things work, but then when it goes to the retailer, he does not handle it properly, does not follow the guidelines, and then the manufacturer gets a flag. So now with the FSSAI, everybody in the supply chain kind of needs to follow these standards and guidelines that are given in the regulation. Okay. Now, this was predominantly India. So we talk a little bit about what happens in other countries. Of course, in India, we got the FSSAI. There is US FDA, which has a Food Safety Modernization Act, or FSMA. Now that is applicable and it is mandatory. Earlier, food safety was a voluntary compliance on US, where there was no inspections or audits done, but now it is enforced. Of course, Canada has its own Safe Food for Canadians Act, and then every country has its own act. So Australia has its own, New Zealand has its own, Europe, different countries have their own. So these are all mandatory regulations that are available in each of these countries. And if you are doing businesses with these countries, you will be required to kind of fulfill all the requirements for that country if you're exporting that product. And we'll talk about some of the issues in that. Now, apart from the mandatory, there is also voluntary systems. So there is an ISO 22000, which applies to food. This is a recognized standard, food safety management system standard, and recognized globally. There is FSSC 22000 food safety system certification, and this is also a globally recognized standard. Now, the difference between ISO and FSSC is that FSSC is a GFSI. GFSI is a global food safety initiative. So it is compliant with GFSI, and ISO is not GFSI compliant. So if you are looking at a globally recognized, or the most globally recognized kind of a standard, then FSSC is probably your way to go. Of course, there is the European Union before. So FSSC is comparatively new in the space. There used to be ISO 22000, and then the British Retail Council Consortium has its own standard called BRC. So if you are exporting into Europe, most of your buyers would ask you for a BRC standard implementation. Of course, there is Internet IFS. There's other like SQF, and there may be a few more here and there, but broadly, these are the most kind of popular ones, the ISO, the FSSC, BRC, and IFS. And all of these are based on the standards of HACCP. So it is, so for those who are not familiar with HACCP, it stands for Hazard Analysis and Critical Control Point. That forms the backbone of all of food safety management system. So it doesn't matter where you are, whether it is a country-specific regulation or the voluntary regulation, all of them talk about HACCP. FSSAI talks about HACCP, and so does every other standard.
Hello. I request all the participants to stay on mute throughout the course until the speaker allows you to ask questions. So I'm sorry, please go ahead.
No problem. So that's the one term I think that every entrepreneur needs to get familiar with, saying how to do a HACCP, how to carry out the risk analysis, and how to kind of control the hazards. So I think that's the basis of all of these standards. Uh, Now, coming back to why adopt the standards, right? So we always think about this is something that is optional and why do I care? There are various reasons for doing it, and we'll talk about each of these in a little more detail, and I'll show you some examples. Some of it from Indian market, some of it from outside in different countries, but basically it helps reduce your risk for consumers as well as it enhances your brand equity. We'll see how you can use the standards to improve your brand. Um, then it also helps you communicate quality to customers. So your customers are likely to pick up your product more likely to pick up your product if you can communicate to them that your product is a quality product. The third one is about reducing complaints and rejections. So I think complaints and rejections are a huge problem in food and recalls. The recalls don't happen so often in India, but there is a recall procedure. There are a few recalls that happen, and it is going to become more and more sort of in thing as we go, as the regulator starts enforcing, starts looking at better enforcement. And of course, the last one is a standard argument that I don't need to kind of restate, which is improve efficiency. I think all system processes are designed to improve your efficiency. And so I will just leave it at that. I think most people understand that concept, and I will really not talk about improving in efficiency too much. Because we all know what system-oriented stuff can do. So it's not just food. I think everywhere, if you implement a system and a process, that will help you improve efficiency. So how do we reduce risks for our consumers and enhance your brand equity? So here are some of the snapshots. So if you see General Mills, one of the examples is from General Mills, which spends a lot of money and effort on being a leader in food safety. And they say that it is a differentiator for them. So, and they do it for the differentiation, and they've been able to kind of come out of it. So there's a lot of brands from General Mills, which command a premium in the market because of that leadership that they do. The next one is self-explanatory. We all saw the mess that the honey industry went into for various reasons. Now, some of it legitimate, some of it illegitimate. Then there were various questions asked about the regulation itself, whether the product complied with the regulation or not. Some of it did, some of it did not, but I think if you are conscious about your product and the food safety of your product, I think situations like this can be completely avoided. So your brand kind of saves itself from taking a beating. So the one on the left, if you see, is your financial risk. The FSSAI has stepped up enforcements. So if you see, the amount of penalty imposed has increased by 23% during 18 and 19 compared to previous years, and about 32 crores have been collected in fines. Criminal cases seen 86% increase since the conclusion of it takes time. Yeah, but during the year there have been 701 convictions in criminal cases so far. So these are all from FSSAI report and not something I'm cooking up. The overall kind of enforcement has gone up. Of course, we just don't have to look at the negative side. Of course, there's the positive side as well. So like Tetra Pak uses the food safety as a very important plank for its product. So it says Tetra Pak, so they ran a campaign a while ago saying right to keep food safe in 2015. And they did a lot of kind of branding marketing around that. So there is branding marketing value in doing this, and of course the risk reduction is a key aspect of that. The next thing we talked about is about communicating quality. So I briefly touched upon it, saying buyers are more likely to choose a product that comes with some kind of a kitchen. And what I have listed below that is from the US Food Study, that the US Foods is a company which is into the food business, of course. So they they've done some studies around it, which says that it affects consumer behavior. So that's the second part of it, saying certification estimated to increase sales revenue approximately by 2% because it increases consumer confidence in the safety and quality of the food they purchase. So a 2% uptick in revenue is huge. So it is important from that aspect, of course. And then buyers are also more likely to choose a product that comes with some kind of a certification. So this one is a study done by CertCost in Europe, which is the customer's willingness to pay for organic certified logos. So there is customers are more willing to pay. So they even went and said that even if it was like a not really verified logo, but if you kind of did a logo, then customers would pick up something with the logo. And all of the systems allow you to put a logo on it. So on the right, you'll see you can put a HACCP certified, where people will get to know that you are compliant with the standard. Of course, you can also put an ISO 22000 certified on your packaging. So they both allow you to put their logos on the package. So you can communicate to your customers that, okay, you are compliant with the standards. Of course, if you are moving across borders and across supply chains, then the quality certification does create a seamlessness. So I don't know how many of you have already entered into the market or you're planning to enter to the market. If you go into an organized retail, even in India, not just globally, but even in India, most of your organized retail will ask you for some kind of a system, a process, a certification. So even if you want to go kind of supply something into cafe coffee day, they would ask you that what kind of a system certification process do you have? Or for that matter, anything like if you want to do like a third party manufacturing for, of course, if you're doing third party manufacturing, then absolutely everybody asks you. So we work with a lot of companies in the milling, the people who work with ITC, with General Mills. Of course, there's the Cokes and the Pepsis, which have bottling plants. So all of them absolutely ask you for a system and process. Dabur, for that matter, they will make you go through a very exhaustive audit system and a checklist which you have to comply with. So if you have a standard already in place, that is one less thing you need to kind of worry about. It is already there. It provides the reassurance. And if you are on a global standard, then it is just seamless. So you don't have to worry about India or anywhere else in the world. So that helps as well. Of course, your systems and processes can help you reduce your complaints and rejections. So if you see the chart on the right-hand side is really the number of import refusals done by the US for consignments from India. And you see India is very, very lacking in this. Compared to, so what you have is for the comparable size. So these were in the order of how much they were exporting. So Vietnam was exporting a little less than India. Switzerland, Ireland, Australia were exporting a little higher to the United States. But so that's the blue one. That is the export chart. But you will see the rejections from India are horribly high. And we all know rejections, especially if they are in the export market, costs a lot of money. You cannot do anything with the product. You have to throw it there. You cannot bring it back. There are dumping costs as well. So you don't get money and you pay for the dumping cost as well, or handling cost there for the unsafe food. So here are some other studies which says if you have fewer complaints, then the complaints consume roughly 0.53% of employee time. And the reduction in complaints due to certifications also reduces company labor costs significantly. So that's a net savings in your pocket. So 1.53%. Of course, there was a hypothetical case which I took out, but it could run into millions of dollars depending on the size of your operation. But clearly, there are benefits from reducing complaints and rejections. Um, we talked about General Mills. So again, General Mills conducted 5 voluntary recalls in 2018. So this was post tightening up their food safety certifications and management systems that they did. So they reduced their recalls to 5 from the 9 they had previous years. So it does pay you to kind of implement a system and process and a good tight system and process. Of course, the graphic on the right bottom is on the sesame seeds from India. We'd written a short article on it. Um, European Commission tightened the checks, in the rejects increased because pesticide residues were contaminating. So they figured out that a lot of our products were going under the radar with a lot of pesticides. So they tightened it, and which resulted in a lot of rejections that came in the EU. So that's again loss to the seller. So if we can take care of some of these things before the product goes out, there is value in doing this. Of course, there's other things, but I think I'll stop here. Just before I end, I want to go through a little bit about who we are. So we are a house of food technologists, microbiologists, nutritionists, of course, focused on food businesses and providing end-to-end solutions. Of course, we have a cumulative team experience of over 100 years in food technology, information technology. We understand the national and international regulatory standards. We've implemented food safety management systems across 40 countries. We've trained quite a few people. We are an FSSAI partner for the FOSTAC program, ServeSafe program, all of it. And I'm saying this just to kind of for you to be reassured that we understand what we are saying. It's not just something that's coming off the head. So with that, I'd like to stop. And if there are questions I can take, I think I also have Surabhi on the call, who's our head of regulatory, just in case, because I might falter a little bit on the regulatory specific ones, but she was good enough to join, so she's here. We'll try to see if there are any questions, and then we'll take it forward from there. So does that sound okay, Weber?
Yeah, that's fine, sir.
Was this good enough?
Yeah, it was good, sir. I think from now on, the participants have to make use of your presence here by asking their specific questions and trying to get more information from you. So the onus is on the participants now.
Yes, so that's why I thought we'll leave some time for people to ask questions, because it's a vast topic and it was hard to understand how big a size, or I think the scale, or what kind of questions might be relevant. So I just kind of put together a broad overview, and then rest of it we can ask in a question.
Yeah, the session is open for questions. Please answer. Please ask questions by participants.
Hi, sir. This is Ankur this side. Can you hear me?
Yes, Ankur.
Hi. Thank you for that presentation. That was very useful. We are coffee entrepreneurs hoping to start a coffee house, and also linked mobile, what we're calling mobile coffee units, probably in Pune, and hopefully sometime next year, depending on the economic situation. So these mobile coffee units will be sort of coffee trucks that will go around neighborhoods serving coffee to people at their households. That's the envisioned concept. I was wondering, is that a very regulated space, or is there any kind of act that we can look at or regulatory acts to look at compliance from a food and safety standpoint, as well as maybe any other licenses that we might need. We haven't really been able to find much in the research that we have done.
Okay, good question. And I say this because the mobile food van thing is a little of a tricky issue. So there are no clear regulations on that. Um, from so you would really kind of treat it very close to a street food vendor concept, but most people don't. So the closest to that is probably street food vendor, but then it is not an unorganized sector. Street food vendors tend to be very, very unorganized, and this is an organized sector. Um, but specific to this, there aren't any regulations. Of course, the closest you would come to is probably a QSR kind of a setup where you will have to meet the requirements of the standard hygiene that you would set up in a small restaurant or cafe kind of a setup. So those should be your regulatory requirements broadly. Surabhi, you want to add?
Yeah. Hi. Thank you for that question. I think you will be falling under food vending agencies category. So there are different licenses depending on your turnover and the kind of business that you're planning to do over there. If you're planning to sell anything else from apart from coffee or along with coffee, then the things might differ on that. But yeah, you will have to comply with the licensing requirement. And now recently, FSSAI has come up with the labeling and display requirements for the vending agencies or the fresh food which is being served from our restaurants or the cafes. So you might have to comply with those requirements as well.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
All right, I think there is a question from Akshay. He says, I want to know more on new set of guidelines for labeling which is being implemented shortly. So I think part we covered. So there are two sides to the labeling requirement. I think fresh food has a new set of labeling requirements that have come, and then there is the new labeling and display requirements that have come again. I am not so sure if we'll be able to talk in great details about that, but there's fairly significant change. If there is a specific question that you have, then we can look at it. There are changes like the non-veg now is a brown triangle logo. And in the fresh food space, there is requirements that you will now have to put calories for your food, also allergen declarations. So things like that have to be added. So if there's anything specific one you want to talk about, then we can sort of talk about that.
Do you have anything specific? Can you ask that question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I said this is actually here, and I wanted to know about packaging for coffee powder and such for retailing and to be kept on the shelf.
Okay. So I think the regular, whatever the packaging and labeling guidelines are there that apply, the only exemption, so the extra you will need to put is the chicory mixture. If you're adding chicory to it, then the percentage of chicory has to be declared, and you don't have to put the nutritional information. So that's your exemption. Otherwise,
okay. That's been the same. Okay, so there is no major changes for coffee packaging from the earlier set of guidelines.
Nothing that has come very specific to coffee, unless I'm missing something.
Okay. Sure, sir. Thank you so much. Is there any possible link for the document so that we can also go through that? Because I couldn't find it on the FSSAI website.
No, so FSSAI website does put all the notifications. They are all there. All the regulations are available. So you could, you should be able to just do a Google and you will be able to find it. And
sure, sir.
Yeah, we also do a class about packaging and regulation, packaging guidelines, packaging and I'm saying too many times packaging.
Okay.
Packaging and labeling labeling and display regulations along with advertising and claims and legal metrology. So we cover that aspect. So we do run a class, which is a short, I think 2 to 3 hours class on it, where we talk about all of these requirements. So you might want to kind of sign up on that. We have a dedicated learning portal called academy.foodsafetyworks.com. I'll type it in the chat box, where you can go and register yourself so that when the class becomes available, you could sign up for it.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much. And I was part of one of the training sessions for FASTag at Safety Works as well.
Oh, very nice. Good to see you here again.
Thank you so much.
Okay, any other questions?
Hi, sir. It's Ankur again.
Ankur?
Question related to the regulations, FSSAI. You'd mentioned some of the that for turnover below 12 lakhs, a lot of these don't apply. Is my understanding right on that?
Mm-hmm.
So if small businesses have a turnover under 12 lakhs, then they don't really need to comply with the labeling, packing requirements that the FSSAI specifies. Is that right?
Yeah, so if you are a registration, then a lot of those things, so you're just a registration registered vendor, that's it. So you're a very, very small scale, and you will not have to. So if it is packaged food, then you still will have to kind of comply with that. But if it is like a standard vendor supply fresh food, then those may not apply to you. Even in the new guidelines, the new labeling guidelines for fresh food, they say that you have to do nutritional values if you have more than 10 outlets. So they kind of exempt really smaller businesses because the regulator understands that it is difficult for them.
Okay, thank you.
The basic hygiene, of course, is required. As in labeling, packaging, yeah, you get some concessions.
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Basically, in terms of organic labeling, and they say that's an organic label, what's the background document which is required to put up that particular thing, which is and which organic certification or logo is supposed to be more authentic as such? And does it apply to organic coffee as well?
So all products, so in India, the logo is Jaivik Bharat. So FSSAI gives you a Jaivik Bharat logo after you've sort of registered with all your documents. Now, there are two methods. I think people familiar with organic know that there are either NPOP or PSEG. So you can use either of them. The documentation, in a sense, required is at least your supplier should know the source and know that it is coming from an organic source. So based on which one you want to adopt and how much NPOP tends to be a little more expensive. And NPOP is more inspection oriented. So like any other certification, they'll come look at your document systems, processes, and give you a certification. And if you're looking at PSEC, then it is more at a peer level where you can get together and assess each other. And then there is a block level body, there's a district level body which will monitor all of it. So you have to document your minutes and meetings and all of that. So PSEG is a little less expensive, and NPOP is a little more expensive, but the requirement is that you should comply with, you should be certified, at least the farm should be certified for either of this. Again, on the same, we do have a training coming up next week. If anybody would want to kind of go attend that, it's a short, again, 2.5, 3 hours training to introduce you to various organic and how you get your certifications for that. And what are the requirements for organic? Things like how long is the conversion time, what you can put during the conversion time, and then if you are mixing your products, organic versus non-organic, how much should be the minimum organic content so that you can claim it to be organic. So if it is not fully organic, then there are other claims you can make. So all of that we cover in that training.
Thank you. Any other questions? If there are no further questions, can we end the session?
Yeah, sure. So I just, before we end, okay, Ankit, please share the relevant link. So if you go to academy.foodsafetyworks.com, you will find all the trainings listed there that we do, all our training. So you should be able to sign up. So yeah, just to repeat myself again, my name is Ramesh. Of course, I come from a technology background, so I have close to 25 years of experience. I also, whenever I get the time, to mentor startups and help them in whatever way I can. So that's my off-work duty. Talking about the whole startup and food setup, we do help with doing shelf life studies and taking product to market. We are also going to be setting up a small lab for ourselves very soon. So if somebody wants to do basic R&D and kind of test out the product, all of the basic stuff they could do in our lab as well. Of course, you can reach me on my email ID, ramesh@foodsafetyworks.com.in. Either of them is fine. So if you guys have questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can connect with me on social media. My handle is Not Agarwal. And of course, these are the other contact information. So please do follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. Our handle is, and Instagram. And our handle is Food Safety Works everywhere. And then our website is foodsafetyworks.com. You can email us at info@foodsafetyworks.com. So we are reachable in all possible ways. These are our numbers. And Vaibhav has mine. So if you guys need any time to reach out to me, you can always reach out to him and he'll be able to redirect folks to us. We are happy to help in any way. So I just wanted to do this last slide.
I think there is a last question, in fact, which has popped in at the last moment through Mr. Manjunath Gowda. He's asking FSS Organic Foods Regulations 2017 Certification Standard. Is this the one which covers what you just spoke about?
Yes, that's the one.
Okay. I think you've answered all the questions. I suppose more participation was expected today than what we saw today. Probably we'll repeat the session later on for the benefit of others who have not joined in. But there is a small request from the other participants. Can we share this slide with the participants?
Sure, and not a problem. I will.
If you can send it to me, we'll send it across to the participants.
Okay, I'll do that. I'll send it across.
I request the participants who have actually joined in to share your email address so that Nandini, can you take down the email address as they share, so that we can share it with only the people who actually participate in the program. Sir, would it be all right if we share this video of yours which we have recorded on YouTube?
Yes, that should be fine too. I'm not using anything proprietary or anything that we don't know. All of it is public domain stuff, so should be fine.
Thank you so much, sir. You spent a lot of time with us. I hope that the participants take benefit of this. Coffee as such is going through a tumultuous time. We have the consumption going up and down. The prices are not stable, but the critical aspect of being in the coffee sector is to differentiate. One of the key differentiators in this modern era, which has become very conscious of the safety of food, is to have a validated certification. This is what the certification tells the story of the product, where it has come from and what has happened. That is why blockchain and traceability are going to be the key. Where these are technologies which are also the focus of Atal Incubation Center. So that is why we have an MOU with NASCOM IoT, the Center of Excellence on IoT aspects. I hope the participants take this opportunity and go further. We have opened the applications. We are accepting applications for incubation for the second batch. So people who are interested in applying for the incubation can always write to us on Atal Incubation of CCRI, ATAL, incubation, INCUBATION, incubation of CCRI@gmail.com, or you can always get in touch with me. I have shared the the link to join the WhatsApp group which we have created for entrepreneurs. One is for coffee entrepreneurs and for the general aspects as such. Do join in. My number is 81979926903. There is a big increase for packaged food which has gone up, fresh food which is having the right source and the right this thing. I think Mr. Ramesh Agrawal has presented the best of the aspects in how to go in for these regulatory compliances, and also for building your own brand which is believable and validated, which the consumers appreciate. So thank you so much for being present today and taking so much of time. With this, the session will come to an end. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining in, participants. I also wish to thank Coffee Board and CCRI, the management, for allowing us to conduct this program. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a good day. And a happy new year in advance.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.